Hello YouTube, Mishka Valhalla here. Good to see you again. So, if you're here for my last video was about music back then compared to now, more particularly of the heathen, pagan, Norse origin. On this video, I'm going to discuss sacred spaces and how to find them, what they would look like, and just stuff I'm sure many of you, people who already practice heathenry or any sort of nature-based pagan tradition, you already know where to look for a sacred space, but this is definitely to help out some newbies or people just finding their path. And this could help people that are not as new, just need more clarity on where to go to connect with the spirits or the gods. First of all, I can tell you, everywhere in nature is a good place to connect with the gods. There's many different landmarks, waterfalls, stones, trees that you can go to that have a lot of energy, but we'll get into that. The first thing I wanted to get into is if you aren't already subscribed or haven't watched my previous videos, please check them out. I will leave, as always, other YouTubers in the description, people that talk about the same subjects and have bigger educations than I do, especially as far as degrees are concerned and careers. I'm just a humble rune reader who's making his way through college. I'll leave it at that. Well, I will tell you I'm an artist, but you already probably know that watching my video on altars when I showed you my statues, but I can get into those things into another video. But yes, so sacred spaces. If you're a longtime heathen or somebody who has a very nature-based tradition, this is very obvious for you. It's a place where you feel the most energy, a place where you feel drawn to. Every time you walk there, you feel like as if this magnetic force is just pulling you there. That's how I describe it anyway, and how I feel it. The way I feel energy, as the Easterners would call chi, what the Germans would call vril, excuse me, and what the Norsemen could very well call Megan, which is the energy you give in exchange between you and the gods and the spirits and the ancestors. It's something that all living beings have. Again, future videos we can get into that. But yeah, so the energy you feel around you, it's like this magnetic pulsing feeling. If you've ever kind of held your hands out, see how far you can feel sort of a magnetic push. You see, I can feel it from here. Like slowly bring your hands in. Other spiritual channels, not particularly pagan or heathen ones, but people that astral project or dabble in the spiritual, they know about energy, they know about astral travel, all sorts of stuff like that. But when we're analyzing the heathen tradition, obviously we see everything through a Northern European lens. So as far as the names of the gods, the way we understand reality and the layers of existence, the different realms. And that will be if you didn't watch my video on the 9 realms, definitely check that out. It kind of goes over, what I've learned and what I personally see and understand, how the 9 worlds work and how close they are to Midgard, our physical realm, and how it's pretty much just a veil and a wall, like a wall that separates different realms and different dimensions. But, obviously metaphysics, is its own science. I'm not gonna claim that I know the absolute truth for anything on my channel because no one does. This is just my own experiences. I could be wrong. I could be absolutely crazy. Fine. I must be very happy as a crazy person is all I can say. But still. Yes. So definitely try to figure out what type of person you are. We'll continue on the subject of heathenry specifically. That's what this channel is dedicated to. I do know some things about Slavic mythology and Greek mythology, but I won't make separate videos about that. I'll be mainly focusing on the Norse tradition and heathenry in my videos. I will only draw references to other cultures because there's a lot of cultural syncretism that obviously is, well noted in our society, but obviously there are more connections that people can make, and That's why I'm here. But anyway, so, you know, you can start finding a sacred space by going outside, somewhere in nature, somewhere where trees aren't around, no building. Well, my bad. Definitely where trees are around. I mean, no buildings, no houses, no, man-made structures. Like I understand if you like literally made like a little hof, which would be like a temple, like a structure. It's a man-made structure, but it's dedicated to the gods or to the spirits or to your ancestors or the ancestors of that particular land. There's a place you go, a shrine, or in the wild, or in your backyard, where you commune with the gods, where you give your offerings, much like an altar, which most people would have in their own homes. Because the thing about today is a lot of people are ignorant when they see a shrine. Like, I mean, if you go to Mexico, they'll understand, or parts of Italy, anywhere where Roman Catholicism is practiced, they'll kind of understand the shrine, like having something there, but you can't just rely on people outside in the world to just see your altar, consider it sacred, and not touch it. Some people don't even care about that shit. Sometimes people don't even have an understanding of the sacred and don't even care for it. And so if they see this statue of like, let's say this, Thor with his hammer, they'll be like, oh, that's cool, but they won't really give a crap, I mean, they could think it's cool and literally just take it because they don't know what it's there for, I mean, most people probably wouldn't even recognize it to be Thor unless it was literally, a Marvel action figure, because obviously when people hear the name Thor, they think of the Marvel character, not, the actual deity, that heathens worship. But yeah, anyway. I could complain about that forever, but I know it's not going to get us anywhere. But yes, so if you want to have a shrine outside, like where you have a physical statue or a god pole, you want it to be in a safe spot that can't be meddled with, especially if your sacred space is in your backyard, and I will add what makes that space sacred to you. One, you feel like you can truly connect to the gods when you're there. You feel like you're being listened to. Those are the first two things, feel at peace there, feel like, there's this energy pulling you in, feel like you're being listened to, and like, you're being reciprocated when you go to that space. This is very important. You can't just, well, you can, but I wouldn't consider it helpful. You could just go to some random tree you find pretty, or just have this, thing, this, I don't know, this beautiful oak in your backyard, but you don't feel anything when you're around it. I mean, I know you can connect oaks, in the lore you can connect the oak tree with Thor or Odin, some accounts, but the oak, just because it's an oak doesn't mean it's your sacred space. You have to feel drawn there. You have to feel like there's something you're getting out of it, something that is overall spiritually beneficial about that place. Because the way we understand spirituality, or at least the way many of us do in heathenry, is that it's an exchange, a give and take. This goes into the rune Gibo, the one that looks like an X, literally an X. It means gift or to give. It's like karma in a way, or I like to compare the rune Gibo to Orlog, since we're talking about karma, which I will make about a separate video about. So yeah, like you give and you receive. That's what you have to have in your sacred space, or any ritual platform, because that's the art of ritual, that's the art of lot. You're giving to receive, and if you receive, you better damn straight give back. Because if the gods bless you with something, well, especially the gods, but if your ancestors or the spirits or anybody offers you something, just out of nowhere, like let's say that you get this inexplicable gift, that no physical person could have possibly given this to you. Thank the gods, or thank the spirits. Thank who you know in your heart, in your spirit, who truly gave you this gift. Usually we can tell, but that gets into a deeper topic of energy and feeling things out, and working with your Megan and your your physical spiritual energy. But back to the subject of sacred spaces particularly, you gotta feel that spark. Go into the woods. If you don't want to make an altar, like a physical altar, if you do decide to have a physical altar, keep it in your house or in your backyard, somewhere where it can't be meddled with. But the other alternative, which could have been very well the most common thing in the olden days, was like having a sacred grove or a sacred tree. That was a very common thing, to have this tree in the center of your community that could symbolize the axis, Irmansul, or Yggdrasil. This structure. It could just be a big stone, somewhere where everybody gathers, feels really close to the gods, and the spirits. Find a natural landmark. That is probably the quickest way to find a sacred space. It's all of nature is a temple. Like, don't get me wrong, you can connect to the gods or any sort, especially the spirits, any sort of spirit in nature. But if you really want to have a space that's dedicated to the gods, or Odin or Thor, a particular deity, you got to go actively out and find that place, and then you have to keep coming back, because as you use a space, it starts to gather more of your energy, and therefore it starts to gather the energy of the god or the goddess that you're communing with, and so that being will want to be in that area more often, and that area itself could very well be a portal of sorts, a way of slipping between the realms, maybe not physically, because I don't believe personally that these physical bodies can go to the other realms. Our mind has to go to the other realms, and I do believe that we are doing that in a way when we lucid dream, when we astral travel, astral project, whatever you want to call it, when we're witnessing another reality, without, having to take tons of LSD, or, but when we're like genuinely like somewhere, we can talk about substances and using them to induce states, but if you were to ask me, they are not what's going to give you a spiritual experience. They can help you get there, like a training wheel, I do believe, but don't use it just so it can give you a spiritual experience, because you need to use it to get yourself to a spiritual experience. And sometimes, in fact most of the time, you don't need it at all to give yourself a spiritual experience. I'd consider it the lazy way out, like a training wheel. Taking this substance and having it help you get to that higher state, especially if you want to, meditate or do a ritual or shamanic journey, astral travel, but it's not something you need, like there is evidence, in the past for people using psychedelics to induce spiritual gnosis and to enhance experiences. Yes, enhance. I think that enhancing was very likely, the reason why our ancestors used it, not so much, literally believing that mushroom or that strand of cannabis, like, actually alone gave them a spiritual experience, because I don't believe that. I am an animist. As a heathen, I am an animist. Some heathens don't believe heathenry is animistic, but those people do need to open a history book, especially of, revolving around all the neighboring cultures. But it's not something you need, but sometimes it can be helpful. But that's my opinion. Whatever works for you. I just definitely recommend you don't overdose and get yourself killed. That's all I have to say. But yes, so we're walking on a path. We find a beautiful stone. You feel the gods pulling you towards it. You feel this sense of, oh, Thor. No, it's not Thor. Freya. No, it's Odin. I feel Odin. I feel Odin's presence when I speak to this stone, or when I touch this stone, or when I give offerings near this stone. I feel Odin watching, I feel him listening. Sometimes I look around and I see the trees or some twigs on the ground shaping runes. But these runes, these natural phenomenons, aren't just gibberish. These runes that you're reading happen to actually give you information, and that's another thing. It is really helpful to learn the runes. For me, anyway, heathenry has gotten 1,000 times easier when I learned the runes and learned how to divinate with them and how to use them and help them learn, throughout my spiritual path. But they're not for everyone, in the sense where not everybody wants to learn them, not everybody needs to learn them, and you don't, you just don't need to. But I'd say it makes things 1,000 times easier. You could just be some master vulva or a Seiðarmaður, Seiðarmaðskar. I forget the actual Nordic term, but like a Seiðarman, some of that practices the art of Seiðr, uh, shamanic journeying, fate weaving, what they called in the saga as woman's magic, but likely in the past it wasn't considered woman's magic. It was, something that everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people did, to get in contact with the other realms, to send their mind, while in trance to these other places. But yeah, it's again, it's all about your personal pull to these places, to these landmarks. And if you don't feel anything from that stone, keep walking. Go to that big ash tree over there, or maybe that elm tree, or maybe that yew tree. It'd be pretty cool to see all those trees in one place. But the point is for you to find that energy, that pull. So that tree ain't pulling you, the yew tree ain't pulling you, the ash tree ain't pulling you, that oak tree has something, but it's probably just a land spirit. And maybe that's not what you're looking for right now. Maybe you're not looking for a land spirit. Maybe you're looking for, connection to Odin, or maybe you want to connect to Freyr. And then you happen to come across, some sort of stream, and the water there, draws you in, and you look into the water, and you can almost scry. And scry, I can make a separate video about that. It's a form of divination. When you look into, you can even do it with a screen, like a computer screen. Like you can look into a black screen and just focus on what images come to your mind. That's scrying. The idea is that your mind's eye, or your Hugi is Hugger is seeing this. Your mind's eye is seeing this. And it's giving you messages. I'm sure you've heard of the crystal ball. You see these shapes, or when you close your eyes and you see these shapes dancing around your eyelids. The point when you scry is to learn to pay attention to those and how to decipher them, and that is a form of divination. But obviously it takes a lot of skill for you to see them more clearly. After like a first person that tries is going to close their eyes and see very blurry images that pop up, but maybe some of them mean something to them, but it's easy to just dismiss it as memory. That's why you have to practice to get better. But it's obviously not my field. I'm a rune reader, but I do know people that are very good at scrying, and it is a real thing, and I definitely recommend you get into it if you've ever been intrigued by crystal balls, or staring into rivers, or an ocean, and perceiving what these bodies of water have to tell you. But yeah, so you're looking for Frey. You find the stream, you can feel the water moving. It's almost as if it's moving throughout your body when you go there. I'm not saying that's exactly how you have to feel when you go there, but you still have to feel that pull. The water's moving, the birds always seem to, fly above you when you're near it. You can kind of almost appreciate the smell of the area, the overall feel. There's a nice rock you can sit on, or a patch of grass. Maybe there's some sand nearby. There's like a little sand bank near the little river or the little stream. Somewhere where you can relax and just take everything in. And by this stream is a tree, and this happens to be the only tree you truly feel connected to. I walk through the forest and I feel connected to all the trees. I look at the trees and I'm like, this is all a part of us. This is all part of the bigger tree, the tree of life. This is all part of the greater picture. This is all part of nature, all part of us. And I feel that when I walk in the forest. But sometimes I will see one tree or one big stone that truly stands out among the rest. And that's what you see at this stream. You see this tall tree. It could be like a pine tree, an oak tree, an ash tree, any tree. Maybe it's a holly tree and it's growing mistletoes. That would be pretty damn cool. You see that, you feel something from it. You could connect that to anyone. You could connect that to Baldur. You could connect that to Heimdall, Freya or Frigga. If you worship Freya and Frigga separately. I don't personally. I consider them the same goddess. Yeah, I used to believe they were two separate deities, but I personally do believe them to be the same. I can make a separate video about that, but again, there are other channels I will recommend that do have videos about that. But yeah, or I'll definitely discuss it in a future video. But yes, so you are connected to this holly tree, this stream. You're sitting there. You're taking it all in, and you speak your mind, or you speak, your intentions. What you're asking from Freyr or Freya or Odin or Thor. You're asking one of the gods or the goddesses, what can I do to serve you here? Can I have this in return? This is what I need. I will give you this so this can happen. It's and then you hear them listen, or you hear them listening. You feel them listening. When you feel listened to. When you're talking and you see your dad or your grandpa. He's like right in front of you. He's like, yeah, okay, huh, yeah, oh, wow, yeah, okay. He's like sitting there. Just taking it on. He's not like, no. You don't feel that way. You feel like they're looking at you. You feel like they're listening to you. That's very important. Because if you don't feel listened to, what's the point of being there? Keep going. Find a new place. You don't have to hear a voice. You don't have to see a big, tall god with an antler in his hand to know Freyr is listening to you. That's not going to get you anywhere. If you do literally see Freyr, good for you. That is badass. I'm jealous. But most of the time, that's not going to happen. If not all the time. So find this place that you feel connected to. Find a place to sit. Make sure you're listened to. Make sure you feel like you are pulled to this place and that this place holds spiritual significance for you. I will tell you the story of how I found my first sacred space. And this was before I was heathen. Or actually right before I was heathen, which, definitely gives it more meaning to me. I'll tell you the story. So when I was living back in Alaska, and right now I'm living in Miami, in case you don't know, there's plenty of spaces in Alaska to be, where I felt close to the gods. That was where I found the gods, was, a few years in, probably, I think 3 or 4 years into living in Alaska. About 3 years. Yeah, about 3 years, 2-3 years living in Alaska. I was in middle school when I got there. So this was a very early journey. And currently I am 21, or turning 22 soon, but besides the point. 21, I had an early journey, and everything I know was thanks to living in Juneau, Alaska, and finding so many sacred places of nature. And what's beautiful about that is that many of these indigenous tribes that live there, such as the Tlingit, the Haida, the Tsimshian, Inuit groups, a lot of them did the same things that our ancestors did. They went to the forests, and they worshipped their spirits, their gods, their ancestors. They had such a similar love for nature, and a very similar culture, with how they kept, thralls. They had, obviously Norse, thrall is a Norse or Germanic word, for someone who is, indebted, or somebody who serves a master without getting paid. Sounds like slavery. It is slavery, but when we're talking about slavery in America, that's essentially, like hardcore, cruel, no chance of freedom. I mean, there was a bigger chance in the North, but in the South, obviously, it was much worse. Far less privileges. You couldn't, have, a stable family as a slave. Like you could in more northern areas. It was, it was more like northern slavery is what I'm trying to say. Like in Europe, in ancient Europe, and in the ancient world, it wasn't. It didn't give this long-lasting, awful impression that it gave to America. This was something that existed for thousands and thousands of years, the whole of humanity's existence. All this, serfdom is another term you could use, for the type of loyalty that a thrall would have. They don't. Maybe a thrall has less rights than a serf. I'm not entirely sure, but the idea is that they don't get paid. Maybe they work for their freedom, but they work the farms and the fields. They cook. They pamper. If you're a woman, what's interesting. Well, not that interesting because it's not unusual today, but as far as the gender norms and all that stuff. But there were more rights for women in the Viking Age, and before. But the a free woman would have more rights obviously than a thrall, which would be a carl woman. They could divorce their husbands. Uh, a lot of evidence says that they could even go to battle, own land, especially have titles. And but a thrall was different because the thrall didn't have any rights. It was either this person was either captured in battle, or was a local, was the daughter of a local chieftain that was overthrown. It's just anything can happen there. Maybe they'll serve their whole life, doing the fields and cooking food and cleaning the king's feet, but they could also be working for their freedom. Like let's say a nice farm owner, in Sweden has a thrall, and they're like, you know what? If you work one more year, then you're free. Or work 5 years and then you're free. It's anything can go. It's all up to the owner, but just essentially slavery. But yeah. So the Native Alaskans kept their slaves. They would have them in their home. And they would be a part of the family essentially. But they wouldn't have the status and the freedom, of the chieftains and the common folk. It's similar. You have this caste system per se, this social pyramid, this hierarchy all over the world. It just goes under different names, different principles, and stuff like that. But yeah, so my point being, these people were pagans, and were pagans for much longer than our ancestors because we were Christianized in the Middle Ages, which sucks. So a lot of this ancient knowledge, we should definitely listen to the native inhabitants of any continent, especially people who lived close to our ancient ancestors that still have these still have this mystical knowledge, this nature-based shamanic knowledge. And that's why many people in Scandinavia would go to the Sami, or any other indigenous group that still has the knowledge, still knows things. But yeah, so that's what also made Alaska very special, was that it was pagan for much longer than the majority of North America, or in fact most of the world, except for all the other little indigenous groups scattered around the world, that still live their lifestyle and all that. Just pretty beautiful, just a shame that the world treats them like crap. But nothing new there. So yeah, gotta get back to that, what I was talking about. So the sacred space I found in Juneau was near my house. There was this little wooded area, this grove area. It was less of a grove and more of like a riverbank. But yeah, there were trees around it. You would go down, there'd be like rocks everywhere. There was much more rocks than sand in Alaska, but especially in Southeast Alaska, the region I lived in. But there was some sand on this beach, but not a lot, obviously. And whenever I went there, I really felt the water. It was a nice big river. You could still see the trail across from it, but there was a sense of being alone in nature, which was amazing, despite all the planes here and there that would fly over. But this is Juneau, small town. This is Alaska. So I still felt at peace. I still felt submerged in nature. And what I would do is I would keep walking up this little hill area, and then I would go through this little forested area, and then towards the edge, closer to the bank again. If you go around, you go under this fallen tree thing, and you'll find this little clearing, and that was perfect. That was the perfect spot for me. There was even a little fire pit there, and most of the time, nobody ever went there. There were some, and they did ruin some things that I put there, but that's why I stopped building things there, because eventually it just got annoying as hell. But most of the time people didn't go there. You could be there, you could see the sun, you could see the trees in front of you, you could see the water, and then there were trees all around you. And there's this long log I could sit on, and it was perfect. I sat on this log and looked around. It changed over time. There was a point where the water rose, and all the sand and the dirt from the bottom of the river got all over this area and covered it for a time. But then the water level went down, and it was still preserved. But the grass wasn't as nice as it used to. It was much more mucky, much more covered in dirt than it was before. But it was still nice. It was still sacred, and I still felt connected there. That whole area, I felt connected. There was really few places in Alaska I could go where I didn't feel close to the spirits or the gods, but especially the spirits. Spirits everywhere in nature. That's why they're called land spirits, because they literally live on the land. The trees are their homes, the stones, the rivers. There's spirits everywhere. That's animism. That's paganism. Spirits everywhere, hiding everywhere. So, of course, I had to get used to something, and that was the idea of being watched. Doesn't bother me anymore, but obviously it bothers a lot of people. I understand. What bothers me more is the camera on this computer. I don't want to be watched by the government, but I'm totally fine with being watched by a bunch of spirits, because they have been here forever. So I don't care. But yeah, so this place was nice. I sat there. This is the first goddess I ever got in contact with, reached out to. In fact, the first deity, spiritual being, besides, the these different archetypes I developed before I was heathen. I'll tell you how that happened. So I can make a separate video of how I found heathenry, but what I was doing before I became heathen was I was dabbling in mythology and paganism. I never became Wiccan. In fact, I just kind of looked at it and I just didn't want to do anything with it. I wanted something more strictly ancestral. Like, I wanted to know what my ancestors were doing before they were Christian. That's all I wanted to know, and that's what I wanted to do. Because Christianity didn't work for me. I tried it for a bit. I had a Bible, defended, the name of Christ, but it just didn't feel genuine to me. I just felt like I was pretending. So then I looked into the Celtic mythology. I was like, well, I know I have Irish heritage. I mean, among other groups in Northern Europe, Scandinavian, English, German, French, Northern Europe in general, especially Ireland and Scandinavia, and particularly Southern England. But yeah, that's likely because, the Saxon migration from Northern Germany, which I do have German heritage. That also makes sense. But whatever. So whether you believe in genetics or not, it was a pretty accurate test, according to my opinion. But anyway, I was doing 23andMe, not Ancestry.com, so I don't know how accurate 23andMe is generally seen, but, whatever. It's fun, I don't take it incredibly seriously, but it's fun. But yeah, so, I wanted to know what my ancestors were doing. I looked at all the different European mythologies, or mythologies around the world, and I was like, so there's a god with a spear and a winged helmet in all these mythologies, so they must be the same deity. There's a god of thunder. They must, in all these mythologies, there must be one god of thunder that looks like all of them combined. I just started to like make my own thing, and then that just kind of felt fake too. And so I just kept trying it and trying it. Like I think I sacrificed a kiwi because I didn't know what I was doing. This was like, me, just entering high school, trying to figure out, um, what my spirituality is. I had an idea of what it was. See, now this is turning into a video of how I found my path, and it is not a video about that, but I'll get into depth in another video if you want. But yeah, so no, this didn't work for me. I wanted something solid. And there was a time where I did, in middle school, where I did visit Norse mythology. I went back to these memories, of when I was reading Norse mythology in the library early in the morning, before school. But we can get into that in another video. But yes, so this didn't work. Long story short, found a Norse pagan organization. I won't mention them because I don't like them anymore. But they were, especially for their, folkish beliefs. I'm sure all of you probably know who I'm talking about. But, I don't agree with folkishism. I'm more of a universalist. I do believe that the gods and spirits, in any tradition can be worshipped by anyone. But my only condition is that you're serious about it and that you're genuinely practicing, and it's not just going to be a phase. I don't know. There's something about that just puts me off. I don't like when people just, treat spirituality as like a trend. I know growing up and becoming a heathen, people thought it was a trend, but the point was is that it wasn't, because I was still doing it, carrying on into my adulthood. So it's not going anywhere, and it's probably not going anywhere anytime soon at all. Probably not until I die, until maybe I find out that I was wrong. But I don't believe that. But anyway, death is not the first thing we think about as heathens. Life is what we think about. But anyway, so yeah, this spot, long story short, I found the Norse gods, could pronounce their names. I felt at home. I remembered how I read mythology in the past, and I really felt connected to it. For some reason, as a kid, I just had this notion in my head that I was once a Viking. I was just like, oh, the Vikings. I feel like a Viking. And I'll get more into that feeling, in a later video. But that was kind of what was going on at first. And then the show Vikings came out, and I was like, oh my gods, like this is it. This is something I gotta watch. And then I watched, and I remember seeing the first scene with Odin, walking across the battlefield, and all the ravens flying around him. I will say though that I don't think Vikings is a very accurate show. In fact, I think it's not very accurate at all. But they tried. I will tell you they tried. I can analyze that in future videos, but there are other videos out there, so check them out that are not mine. But yeah, so I remember seeing Odin, and it was the same thing when I saw him in books as a kid. I saw this one-eyed old man, and I said, I know this guy. That's familiar. And if I remember right, I was like, that's dad, or that's daddy, or something weird like that. Like that's, that's the king of the gods. That's Odin. That's, I didn't know his name, but I knew who he was somehow, and but he wasn't the first god I connected to, though. There's this common theme that Odin calls us to the path, but it doesn't mean that Odin is our patron or our, main deity. He's the chieftain, but he's a humble chieftain. He's not, just like, oh, I summoned you, so that has to mean that I chose you. No, it means come home. I'm dad. Come home. You've been far away too long. It's time for you to say bye to Jesus, or Buddha, or whoever you were worshiping before, and time to come home to me. I know some people worship many different gods from different traditions together, but that's not my style. If that's what you want, then go ahead, but that's something I don't do. I have a little altar to Hermes, or Mercury more particularly, but that's because, I don't worship him, but I do, I do appreciate the entity, the being, the god that is Mercury. because I did go to Italy and I got to see all the history there, and I felt very protected there, and I did feel Odin on that journey, but I especially felt Mercury, because the idea is like that's his land, that's where his people are from, um, he's very close to that land, his energy. I remember flipping coins, doing the old pagan tradition of throwing a coin into a well or a fountain. Well, now it's to make a wish, but it's for safe travels. In the old in ancient Greece or Rome, was to ask Hermes or Mercury for safe travels. Or that the safe be clear. By offering him a coin in the fountain, and that's what I did in the Roman forums. It was super cool because it felt really powerful. Like nobody had done that in the Roman forums for a very long time. It felt like, that was just a very cool experience for me. And my statue is actually a replica from Pompeii, because when I went to Pompeii, there was a bunch of vendors, and these people were selling, replica statues that were rusted. Like they actually manually rusted them to make them, look like they were the actual artifact, which is pretty cool. Meaning, originally they were made of bronze, and I do love bronze. But anyway, back to the subject. Trail off often. I'm sorry, I don't edit my videos, at least not yet. So please bear with me for now. I'm not looking to spend that much money anytime soon on software, but bear with me. My videos will get better. Anyway, so yeah, it's very important to feel like you're connected to that space. Feel like God or gods are listening to you. The spirits, are looking at you or hearing your words. Make sure that you actually feel that connection, not like you're just talking to a wall, because chances are they're actually not listening. Maybe a spirit's watching you and it's just kind of like, you don't know what you're doing. Let me help you. But who knows? Maybe, that could be a good thing. And then you could actually find that tree by having that spirit guide you to it, the tree you're supposed to be. But whatever. But yeah, so my sacred space was like that. I felt drawn to it. I felt at peace. Again, I was saying that the first deity I got in contact with was Freya, and she was the first one to claim or choose me. Secondary was Odin, but after Freyr, because Freyr, what I do understand about the Norse gods is they are like a family. You can't really apply many human qualities to them, but then again, they are pagan gods. And so I understand my connection to the gods is more of a family thing and less so, like this all-knowing superior group of beings that just, totally are just, better than everybody, like, I mean, probably better than me, but, these gods, I find them much more humble, and much more believable, relatable, like, more human-like, just overall more approachable. But that's just me. Yeah, so feel that connection. I felt that connection when I was there talking to Freya. I felt like I could perceive her hearing me, like as if she was answering back to, but not in words. Like light, like shining through the clouds, or just the breeze, or just this feeling. Usually it was a comforting, warm feeling of her, like, I don't know, like wrapping me in her arms and just listening to me or something like that, if that makes any sense. Sometimes you'll really feel connected and drawn to these places, and you'll really feel these entities that you're trying to connect with. And I did in that place. I felt connected to any being I spoke to. I mean, obviously, especially Odin and Freya, because they did become, both of them were, eventually established as my two patrons, or patron and matron. But yeah, it was a crazy journey, a very beautiful, eye-opening journey to find my sacred space, and to realize that we don't need a structure, a building to worship the gods, because the gods are in nature. Our temple is the forest, and that is where we can go to truly feel the raw energy of the gods and of the spirits of the earth, the sky, the trees, the water, all around us, just living, truly living off the land. and within the land. And they have a strong hold over the land, and people really need to learn to respect the land more, because these spirits will cause problems if you don't respect them, and that's something I very firmly believe in. But yes, so I hope this has been helpful for you. Make sure you find that spot that you're drawn to. Make sure that it calls to you. Make sure you feel listened to, and I guess if you feel listened to, you'll definitely feel like your words are being received and like you are receiving information back. Don't be disappointed if you don't hear a voice. You can't just sit there and expect to just be this all-knowing prophet and have Odin directly speaking to your mind or something. Most of the time you are feeling their presence, and you are feeling their answers, and you are feeling their questions. They connect with you at a very deep level, a very internal and natural nature-based level. It can be very personal for the individual and very empowering. And I definitely recommend everybody finds a sacred space, especially if you have forests and if you have natural landscapes near where you live. There is no excuse for you. I have an excuse because I am in quarantine and I'm in a city that doesn't have any forests, anywhere close to where I am, or you have to go out of the city to find a forest. You'll find parks, but usually they're full of people. Not many private places you can go, and it just becomes a disaster. And when I'm here, it's almost as if I can feel the spirits suffering under the concrete, and I don't know. It's just, cities are not my thing. I'm very rural at heart. Very traditional heathen when it comes to being close to the land and being close to more natural green resources opposed to grocery stores. And I appreciate what we have today. I really, really do. But when it comes to my spiritual life and where I want to live, it's somewhere secluded, somewhere in nature, where it's just me, the spirits, my loved ones, and the gods, and just maybe some friendly kinsmen or neighbors. But I don't need this big old concrete building to feel safe or like I have a good life. To me it's just unempowering and draining. As a heathen myself, I feel drained in a city. But obviously there's things I gotta do here before I go back. And I will go back to visit soon, but I can't move back soon, sadly. But yeah, so hope the video was helpful. Like I said, I will have YouTuber recommendations in the description. And without any further ado, I'll keep taking recommendations. Please like and subscribe. And thank you for watching. Hail, and have yourself a nice day or evening.